All right, we're rolling.
Okay.
So, just, tell us a little about yourself, your name, your age, what you do, and how long you've been doing it.
My name is Robbie Wingfield. Hello, friends. I am 39 years old. I just had a birthday on March 23rd. Very exciting quarantine birthday. But I'm married to my high school sweetheart, and I have an 8-year-old daughter that is in first grade. She in first grade? Second grade? Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. She's in second grade. She has a late birthday, and so I always forget. But yeah, she's in second grade.
So,
And oh, you asked me how long I've been doing what I do.
uh,
I'm a full-time musician, and I've been a full-time musician for about 10 years, where all I did was various musical jobs. Prior to that, I had other different day jobs, some music related, some not. Uh, my current em- my current main job, playing for the show that I'm in, which is at the Wynn Hotel. The show is called Reve, and I've been there for a little over 2 years.
okay. So, you said you've been a musician for 10 years. Is this what you wanted to do ever since you were little?
Yeah, ever since I can remember, actually, I've wanted to play the saxophone. The saxophone's my first instrument that I learned,
Okay.
and there was an episode of Mr. Rogers where I think it was Mr. Rogers, maybe Sesame Street,
Okay.
where they go to a saxophone factory and they show how saxophones are made, and there's just like this wild, crazy, like really avant-garde jazz music playing in the background, and there's all these like crazy saxophone sound effects happening that kind of mimic as they bend the metal or they hammer different things. It would make these wild saxophone sounds, and I was just so drawn to that. And I was about 5 years old when I saw that, and all I wanted was that.
The
And I
saxophone
begged
fit.
I begged my mom to buy me a saxophone, and I was too young to play a saxophone at that point. And they bought me this little toy saxophone. I still remember, and there's like baby pictures of me holding this little toy saxophone, and I would play it, but I didn't like it because every button made the same note,
Do you
and I
still have
wanted.
it?
I don't still have. I still have pictures of me walking around sucking on it, but and as soon as I could choose an instrument in sixth grade, you when you sign up for band, you get to like choose which instruments, like first, second, third choice. And I circled saxophone for all three choices, and went out and begged my grandma to buy me a saxophone, knowing that if I had one, that like if I had my own instrument, that they wouldn't be able to say I had to play a different instrument.
Yeah, that's a good way of doing
and
it.
and she found me this used saxophone, and which actually turned out to be like an amazing instrument, and it's still my main saxophone that I play. I've owned other saxophones over the years, um, and I keep coming back to that one, and it's the same one I've had since I was 11 years old. It's pretty crazy.
That's pretty cool. Is there anyone else
Yeah.
in your family that's a musician?
Well, my daughter loves to sing, and she's very active in musical theater. And if you look on my Facebook page, you'll see for my church, we've been, because I also work as a music worship leader. We've been doing sing along Thursdays, her and I.
Nice.
And so we sing all the time, and drives my wife crazy. And we met in high school. My wife and I, she played in the marching band. She played flute,
Nice.
but it music was just a hobby for her.
Okay.
But yeah, don't have a that large of a family, and it's not like I I I was always very jealous of my friends that had those big families where the mom would sit down at the piano and they'd all sing in four-part harmony and all that kind of stuff.
You
But
mean like the Partridge Family?
yeah, I have a few friends that have come from families like that, and they're
Yeah.
amazing, amazing musicians, and I was always jealous of that
My
in
my
your life?
dad ended every day with about an hour of piano playing.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
We didn't sing around it too much. We did sometimes. He would just play for himself, but it was a very nice way to end the day, and that piano is the piano that I have in my house still.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So you said you always wanted to play the saxophone, and you started actually playing with yours in 6th grade.
Right.
I'm assuming you kept it up through high school, but then when you did you go to school after that, and did you study music performance? Like, what did you study in order to, like, what was your path to being a musician as a profession? How did you get there?
So I did go on full scholarship for music to UNLV here in Las Vegas. I had a few other scholarship offers at a couple of colleges, but my wife and I were already getting seemed to be fairly serious at that point, so I decided to stay here. And I studied jazz composition, and I didn't end up finishing at that point. I was working a lot as a I have a stutter in case you can't tell, but I was working as a musician at that point,
Okay.
and I did end up dropping out of school because I was just working so much and thinking I didn't need to go to school.
Okay.
And I did work as a gondolier at the Venetian, like rowing boats and singing. And that
Okay.
was kind of my first foray into singing as a profession.
So I think
Um,
I'm gonna explain to my kids really quickly what that is.
yeah,
So Robbie lives in Vegas, and in Las Vegas, there are these very, very over the top, grand, big hotels that have themes. And the Venetian is made to seem like you're in Italy. And in Italy, they have in Venice these boats that people can get on and ride. And the people who are rowing the boats are called gondoliers, and they sing. So you were a gondolier person in the Venetian in Vegas.
yes.
Okay. Because they wouldn't know that. So I have to explain that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, of course. And so
Okay.
I did that for about 7 years. And my wife and I got married during that point, and I wanted to uh, just make some more money and have some better health insurance and all the boring stuff. And so I ended up doing corporate sales for a while, and ended up really not enjoying it. And my wife urged me to go back to school to get my music education degree.
Okay.
So then, because I really wasn't doing any music while I was working my sales job, and even gondoliering that was more of a day job than really being a full
And
time
that's more
creative
singing.
musician. Yeah, it was just singing. It didn't involve any writing, didn't involve any
Right.
real performing other than singing a couple of
You were
tunes every
you were
hour.
missing that in your life?
Yeah, and so I my 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 wife urged me to go back to school, and when I was in school to study music education, I had to work more just as a freelance musician in order to have income because I was going to school full time, and you can't have a full time job and go to school full time. And as I was in back in school, my wife ended up getting pregnant with our daughter, and we had been trying for a very long time and it wasn't happening. And of course it happened when I was living this crazy life as a 30-year-old back in school full time.
Yeah.
And uh, I was like, I told my wife, I'll go back and I'll get my old job back so I have good health insurance and this and that. And she urged me. She said, "You're a musician. Go be a musician." And I just started working a lot harder, and just putting all of my energy into it, and still going through school. And after I got done with school for music education, I ended up never teaching full time because I had established myself as
as a performing
professional
musician.
music,
Yeah.
working so hard to provide for my family while I was in school.
So I know you said that the saxophone is your main instrument. Do you play
Yeah.
other instruments?
Yeah. So I play saxophone, clarinet, piano, and guitar.
Okay. Do you have the saxophone is still your favorite, right?
Yeah. I probably play more piano than anything at this point. The show I was in prior to the one that I'm in now, in that show, I played two saxophones, clarinet, and two keyboards
At not
during the
the
show.
same time.
There, I mean, pretty close to the same time. That was a very demanding. Uh, that was a very demanding position. It was
So
lit. It was literally play the saxophone, and then play the keyboard, and then play the clarinet, and then play the saxophone, and then play the keyboard.
was that
Yeah,
probably the hardest job you've had as a musician so far?
I'd say that was the most demanding one, and that was probably the first time I felt like the most qualified person to play that book. Like, because I've been a multi instrumentalist my whole life, I've never been the absolute best at it. I mean, I was you know, top chair saxophone all through high school, and I got a full saxophone scholarship, but there were plenty of saxophone players better than me. And there are way, way more piano players that are better than I am, as well as clarinet players. But at that, for that gig, for that job, that was the first time where I was the person who capable enough to play the saxophone, the clarinet, and the piano all at a professional level.
So, I was going to ask you, since you've been playing for so long, do you feel like that there's still anything to learn? But it seems like that would be something to learn, how to juggle several instruments at once during one performance.
Oh yes, and always learning, always practicing. There are things that I played like when I was in school almost 10 years ago now, when I went back to school to get my music education degree. I had to give a saxophone recital, and the music that I played on that recital I couldn't play right now because it it demands that much practice to get it up to performance ready. And that's something that you really can't maintain for a high, it's like somebody who is an Olympic athlete. They'll always be in shape, but to be at that peak
You have to
performance.
be practicing hours and hours a day to keep that up. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I was preparing for my recital, I was practicing 4 or 5 hours a day. You can't do that and do regular life stuff.
So right now you're performing in La Reve, which is a Cirque du Soleil show, right?
Yes.
So what instrument are
Well,
you?
no, sorry. It's a Cirque du Soleil style show. It's not technically owned by Cirque du Soleil, but it looks just like a Cirque du Soleil show.
So what instrument are you playing in that show?
So in that show, I play keyboards,
Okay.
and then I also do programming for the show.
Okay.
Uh, so all of any show that you watch and most bands that you watch play live will be playing along with pre-recorded music.
Okay.
Um, because like anytime you watch a show, you'll hear all kinds of instruments and big string sections and flutes and clarinets and all cool kinds of sound effects. And with most shows, those will be pre-recorded, and then the live musicians are playing along to that pre-recording.
Okay.
And so my job is to manage all of the pre-recorded music.
Okay. Um so what was one of the most exciting things that's happened to you? Like what was one of the most exciting moments of your career so far? Something that stands out like a highlight for you?
um my recital was definitely a highlight because I played some music that I had been practicing for 15 years, wanting to play it and never fully committing myself to the practice needed to get it worked up. And so um, committing myself for that year to that practice to get that worked up, that's definitely, that was a huge personal achievement, not necessarily a huge professional achievement, because there was no I wasn't getting paid for that performance, you
Right.
know, but it was definitely a huge personal
That
accomplishment.
accomplishment. Yeah.
Yeah. As a composer, I've had some really cool accomplishments. I wrote some music for MGM resorts that they were doing this big corporate branding initiative called Inspire Our World, and it was all about corporate diversity and environmental things, you know, recycling and using their resources better. And they decided to cast from within their company, which has, you know, 10,000 people. They casted people to put on a show to kind of explain what Inspire Our World means. And I wrote all the music for that show.
No.
And yeah, and it was staged at the Mandalay Event Center. It was a big, huge production, and the entire company saw it. So 10,000 people or so. So that was cool to get to write the music for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also,
Amazing.
for a long time, I was writing music for slot machines, which couldn't be any more Las Vegas than
But
that, right?
I would never think that that's a job, right? Like I would never think, oh yeah, someone's making the music that goes with the slot machine. That's funny. I like
And
that.
so when I walk through the casino, it's fun to be like, oh, I wrote that music. I wrote that music. You know, when you see
Cool.
the machines and hear it, you know.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, so are there still any instruments that you would like to learn how to play?
I would just like to learn some of the instruments I play better to a higher level. Like my guitar playing is very elementary. I
Yeah.
can, you know, just strum along and play. Like I had a band that I ran for about 7 years, and I was like the backup rhythm guitar player. You know, I could just, while the other guy played all the big fancy solos, I just kept the rhythm going. And
I call myself a campfire guitar player.
yeah, we could definitely be in the same league then. Yeah. um so yeah, you know, or to, you know, at church to play along and stuff like that, you know. But I would always, yeah, there's always stuff to improve, but as far as learning a new instrument, I don't think I really am interested in. I mean, maybe some of the other stringed instruments, like I have a,
I learn the
like
cello.
I oh yeah, like I have a banjo and a mandolin, and I'd like to have a little more command of those, maybe, you know. Or I have an accordion that I can pump out a couple of
Oh,
tunes on,
maybe
you know. But
can you show us the accordion after? Is it down there
I'll
in that room?
I just moved, and so it's kind of
Okay.
piled away.
I don't think
Yeah.
most of my kids have seen an accordion.
Oh really?
Yeah,
Yeah, I can
it's
I
not a
can
common instrument.
yeah, I could, yeah, I think I know where it is. I can maybe go pull it out.
Okay. So is there something that you think you'd be happy doing as a job if you weren't able to do music anymore, if you weren't able to be a musician?
Yeah, I
Not
absolutely,
corporate sales.
right, yeah, not that. I love to cook. Cooking is probably my main hobby since music has become my profession. And I've really studied a lot of cooking over the last 10 or 15 years. And it's really come in handy lately since we can't leave the house, you know? And so,
What's your fancy impress everyone dish?
uh, I don't know. Let me think. I love cooking meat. And so I make couple of different fancy, like roasted roasted beef dishes, and I make a really good bruschetta,
Oh,
which is not not very fancy, but everybody really
Always
loves it.
tasty. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody really loves the way that I make it. It's
As
a very common request.
as fancy as we get, it's still the comfort foods. Like I make a mean mac and cheese, you know?
Oh yeah. Well, the thing that I love about cooking, and I've read different famous musicians' biographies, I've found that that's a very common thing, is that a lot of the musicians that I admire also really love to cook. Like Miles Davis uh, was also very, very
Do you think
avid
it's
cook.
because there's some improv in there?
Yeah, and that's
I like
that
it too.
that was what he said. And
Yeah.
it's funny, I have a friend who's very, very analytical, measures everything, and wants to, you
That's
know
for baking. That's not for
and
cooking.
whenever we would cook together, he was like, he's like, I literally cannot watch you cook because
No.
it gives
For
me anxiety.
For me, you know what? Now that you're saying it, it actually makes sense. When you're a musician and you're starting to learn how to play, you have to learn how to play. And then once you learn how, you can start playing around and making your own music. And it's the same thing. When you cook, you start off learning the basics. And then when you start to learn things, like for me, my most fun thing is to open my fridge and my cabinets and say, okay, what's here and what can I do with this? So I do
Yeah,
have the element of figuring it out and working with what I have and putting something new together every time.
yeah. And what and that and it's just such a great thing to be able to use what you have also too, so you can, make your money last, and you're
Mhm.
doing better, not wasting. And
I had
but
cucumbers. I didn't want them to go bad. I pickled them.
yeah, see, and having the knowledge to do that, is very satisfying, I think. The thing that I love, a big part of my job now, because I also have my own music production studio, and what I do is uh, it evolved from me doing the slot machine music,
Okay.
uh, to now what I do is I design shows for people who sing on cruise ships.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And there's a lot of Las Vegas based entertainers that work out on cruise ships, and so they come to me and they say, I want to perform this music, and maybe they do it the same way that Taylor Swift does it,
So
or
you do
Frank
different
Sinatra.
arrangements?
Yeah, and so either I will arrange it exactly like that artist, or maybe they'll want it a little bit different, and so I'll change it up. But what I do is I have to be able to hear the music and be able to rewrite it out, so because when they get on the cruise ship, it's a different band that plays behind them every single time.
Ah,
And so they have to be able to bring their music in, rehearse it for 90 minutes, and then perform a show with a band they've never played with.
that's pretty quick. That's not a lot
Yeah,
of time.
no, I mean, when, typical shows rehearse for weeks or months,
That's
and
actually that was going to be my next question for you is when you have a new show that you're starting, how long do you have to rehearse usually?
yeah, and so it really depends on the style of the show. Like I said, these cruise ship shows, they go up in less than 2 hours. And so what that means is that all the music needs to be written out very, very specifically, because you're dealing with bands where they sometimes don't even speak English, and the band may not even all speak the same language. You'll have people from the Philippines and from Eastern Europe and from England and from America and from South America, all in the same band.
Luckily, music is an international language, right? Music and math.
Yeah, you know, and so what I do is I'll write out all the music for them, and it has to be very specific, because a lot of times they maybe haven't even heard that music before, so they're just playing what's on the page. It's not like you could just hear it and then maybe pick it up and be like, oh yeah, that's how it goes. They have to be able to just transfer what's on the page into music that sounds like what the audience is expecting.
So, what about for your show, like the show that you're in now, Rev? How long did you
Uh-huh.
have to rehearse for that before you were able to get on stage with them?
So the show was up and running when I joined, so I practiced for a few weeks, But our show is so involved because it's not just music. Like the thing with the cruise ship shows, it's just music. There's no backup dancers. There's no aerial stunts. There's no pyrotechnics. There's no water effects. So my show, um, whenever we've had to add a new number, a new song to the show, we rehearse it for a few months before we put it in,
Okay.
because everything is cued off of the music. Everybody follows the music to know when they need to do what they have to do. And there's scuba divers involved in the show. There's pyrotechnics, there's lighting,
If
there's
we,
fountain
if
water
I wanted
effects.
to include a link, like, is there a preview of the show online so I can include the
Uh-huh.
link for the kids? Okay.
Yeah, I'll send it so you can see it. Yeah, and there's uh uh rigging automation where people are swinging from the ceiling and
Very
just,
fancy.
yeah, and so all of that is cued off of the music, and the music is cued off of the programming that I prepare.
Do
So
you ever
that's
get distracted by everything that's going on?
yeah, and that's the biggest, really, that's the main reason why we practice so much, is so that it so intuitively, it where, like, you be able to sing the ABCs without thinking,
Yeah.
it. And but then that's why doing the show every night, we do the show 10 times a week, 2 shows a night, 5 days a week. The hardest part of the show and the biggest skill that's required is paying attention.
Have you ever made a mistake?
Oh yeah, we've made it, because you have to hit different, every time something changes in the show, there's a button that we press to advance the pre-recorded music.
So what
And if you
happens? How have you handled it when you make a mistake? The audience probably doesn't know that you made the mistake, right?
know sometimes it's been rare that I've made a mistake so badly where we had to stop the show or
Has
anything
that
like that.
happened before?
No,
Okay.
because if we hit the wrong button and the wrong music played, we could quickly just hit the other button, and
Okay.
then now the action would just be a little bit out of sync with the music.
Okay.
We would still keep the action going. There are times where we've had to stop the show because of something happened with the water effects or the rigging, and then we hold the show. But if we hit the wrong music button, we get a little slap on the wrist to not do that again, but we keep going.
Okay. My kids had a couple of questions about based around the actual performance part.
Yeah.
So they wanted to know, do you ever get nervous before you go on stage?
Yes.
So how do you
But
deal with that?
well, I think what's funny is, and I think this is very common through other musicians, the bigger the stage, the bigger the crowd, the less nervous you
Because you
get.
can kind of hide behind everything you think, or
Yeah. Like, if you've never had the opportunity to be on a big stage with big lights, those lights are so bright, you only see the lights. You
yeah,
see blackness
you can't see
and
the
light.
audience, right?
You don't even see them.
Yeah.
That's why if you ever watch um a concert of somebody that's like a Garth Brooks or an Elton John, at and they're where they interact with the audience, a lot of times at some point you'll hear them ask to turn the lights down so they can see the crowd, because they'll want to talk to somebody or see a specific person. So on a big stage, you have this kind of imaginary wall where you don't feel the eyes, you don't feel the people judging you or whatever, and so that it becomes a little bit easier. But where it's the hardest is when you have a super small audience and it's just you. If you're just playing by yourself, with
So,
a room with no lights, with no supporting instruments. That's the hardest.
so you feel more nervous that way. Okay.
Yeah, because and I think that's also, as we're as you one is a developing musician, and we're looking to different performers to want to be our role model, or to people that we want to learn more about. It's easy to gravitate towards the bigger stars because it looks so impressive. And it is impressive to be someone like Lady Gaga or Taylor Swift or something like that. They are very talented, and it takes so much work and so much dedication to achieve that. But it's when you see them perform by themselves, just in a room, is
Yeah,
when
when they do their pared down, acoustic sets, that's usually when they're the most impressive.
and that's where you can really start to separate who has
Real
put
talent.
in, who has put in the most time, who's put in the most practice, who
Yeah.
really knows what they're doing, and that's so. As far as dealing with the nerves, I think it's something that just comes from experience. I think one of the biggest things I have experienced is this feeling of like they're going to figure out that I don't know what I'm doing, the fraud, like the impostor, you know.
And then you go out
And
and you start playing, and does that kind of go away?
it didn't for a long time. The
Okay.
only thing that's made it go away is I've now had the opportunity to perform with a lot of musicians who I've admired for a long time, and now I've been able to work with them and get to know them personally, and to realize they feel the same way.
Do you have any names that the kids might recognize, or that I might recognize?
No, it's mostly like jazz musicians, and that are a little less well known. Um, but it's this universal thing where you feel like you're never quite good enough. And I think the good part of that is it keeps you going. It keeps you practicing. It keeps you from ever thinking, oh, well, I'm good enough. I don't have to keep trying. Because the people who don't feel that way, I've found, are the ones who are usually only good for a short time, and then they don't continue getting better. And I found the people that I like the most and that I admire the most are the ones who are always practicing, always trying to get better. But because of that, they also always feel like they're never good enough. And so it's just it's a balance, and you have to kind of just talk yourself down every once in a while.
Yeah. So when you're on stage for the show that you have now, right, La Rev, how long are
Uh-huh.
you on stage for?
So we're actually not on stage. We're not really visible to the audience. The show is 90 minutes long.
Okay. So
So,
have
so
you
we're
ever, this is one of my kids' questions. Have you ever been in the middle of a show and had to go to the bathroom?
Oh yeah.
So do you,
With my
what do you do?
so I had a band that I ran up until I started my current show. I had a band called Empire Records, and it was an all 90s tribute band, but we did all different kinds of music from the 90s, and we were on stage uh, from anywhere from 2 to 4 sets, and a
Oh,
set is typically 45 minutes.
yeah.
And so you'll get that break in between so you can do your business. But there are some times where you end up having to play like 2 hours straight, and if you aren't prepared, you know so luckily with that band, there were 6 of us. So it didn't happen often, but it happened a few times where one of us would have to just and run off stage and go take care of it and
You come
come
back.
back. Yeah,
Okay.
I had a job. I was playing in the band for a guy named Frank Caliendo. He was like a impersonator. He used to do like the John Madden impersonations on Monday Night Football, and he was on Mad TV. But
Okay.
he had a show here in Las Vegas, and I played in his band. And at one time in the show, our bass player just got violently ill, and he just had to run off.
Wow.
And so super quickly, I had to like reprogram my keyboard to play bass with this hand and keep playing my piano with this hand and sing his stuff that he normally sang.
That's the show must go on, right?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
know, and those types of things are that's what keeps you working.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, having a really good attitude and making yourself indispensable, where you know how to do so many different things and all the different stuff, and being able to just step in whenever you're needed. That's the stuff that keeps you working, and that's not specific to music.
No,
Any job.
that's true.
That's to me the thing that when I was studying music education, and for me, what's most important about studying music is learning how to practice and learning how to get better, and identifying because it is really hard to make a living as a musician. You have to be really resourceful, and because of that, I feel like I've been able to do better in other business forays as I've started my own band or I've started my own studio, because of that resourcefulness. It's that I learned in music. It's made me have more success in those other fields.
That's good.
Yeah.
My band students had a question for you.
Yeah.
They wanted to know, so when you're playing, are you reading the sheet music, or usually when you're in the performance, at that point you've kind of had it memorized, I assume?
I still read the sheet music in my
They,
show.
they want to know if you mark up your sheet music.
Oh yes.
Can you?
That's the biggest thing. Mark up your music.
I try to get them to do it.
Don't write in the note names. Okay. Learn the note names.
They're still working on that.
Yeah. But don't be afraid to mark the music. Like if there's a weird thing where you can't quite count it, what we do is we just put a little dash, and that marks the beat 1 or beat 3. Like if it's a very tricky rhythm, or even if you have to put 4 dashes, you can see exactly where each beat is. Or for me, I have to mark in where I change the patches on my keyboard. Or like when I played in that crazy show where I played all the different instruments,
When you're switching instruments, yeah.
I had to write on my sheet music, pick up clarinet, put down saxophone, turn the page. I had to mark where I turned my pages, because everything was so specific that it was like a dance. I had to have it choreographed. So I think I can remember being in like 7th grade band and not wanting to mark my music because I didn't want to be like, oh, that's baby stuff.
Right. And I think a lot of them feel that way, but it's not. Even me. I'm 36 and I've been playing for a long time. I mark everything up.
Yeah. The easiest way to judge a professional musician is whether or not they have a pencil with them.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for any of the kids who might want to pursue eventually a career in music?
Yeah, like I said, studying music is about learning how to get better. And so when you practice, make sure you're practicing with intention. You're practicing deliberately. You're not just playing the parts that you're good at already. You should be playing the parts that you're not good at.
Yeah.
If people can walk by and hear you practicing and think you sound great, that means you're not getting better.
I like
And
that.
that's tough, because we want to sound good all the time, you know. And so that if you do that to your utmost potential, then you will have the opportunity to become a professional musician. But even if you don't become a pro musician, you're going to end up being really good at whatever it is you do. Sorry for saying do.
Do you, before we end, do you want to show them anything, or do you want to send me a link of you playing the saxophone so I could share it with them?
Sure. Yeah, I can send some stuff to you.
Okay. Because I know in order for you to do the saxophone right now, you'd have to like wet the reed. It's not an instantaneous
Yeah.
thing. So, okay.
Yeah,
So
I can
that's good.
send you
I
some
can
stuff.
include some things because I'm sure they're going to want to see videos of you playing.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know how to flip the Oh, here. So here's my studio rack. There's my Clorox wipes to keep everything clean. So my microphone. I got a couple of cool keyboards over here.
Nice.
This, my favorite keyboard. It was made in 1982.
Wow.
I
That's
know
older than me.
it's almost as old as me. And then sorry, I won't show you all the boxes. So we're
Ooh,
still
nice piano.
moving in, but here's my piano, and I have a little electric drum set,
Oh,
a
no
couple
drum.
of amps and stuff. I've got my organ over here. So sorry it's such a mess. We're still moving, but
My dream is to one day own a house and have a soundproof room in the basement with all instruments.
yeah, so that's how I have it. So that way, whenever I'm working on a new show, I can just hire in a band, and then everything's here, and they don't have to bring their equipment.
Or when it's late at night and you want to play. I got in trouble for playing at 11:30 last night.
Oh yeah,
I got
yeah.
about a half a song in, one verse and one chorus, and then I got a text message saying, "I'm trying to sleep. Please stop."
That's a drag.
Yeah. So I'm gonna end this. I'm not gonna end the chat. I'm just gonna end the video. So if you want to say goodbye to the kids.
Bye, guys. I hope you're doing well. I know homeschooling is so hard, but I hope things are going well with you and your family, and that everybody is healthy and will get through all of this stuff. So keep practicing, and you don't have to be a professional musician to make music a huge part of your life.